So, look, given because of your geographical travel all the time, I think this topic really fit with you. Today's topic is geopolitical risk in project management. We look at project management strategies and case studies. So, let me start my question first. Now, given your experience, as we have talked, especially Middle East, you have been there for a long, long time, and you're working with many governments, Qatar and many other. And how do you factor in political instability and shifting alliances when planning large-scale defense or infrastructure projects?
Yeah, great question. Is there an easy answer? Probably not. But with specifically in the Middle East, and I would actually say, anywhere you go in the world, I think it's very important to have someone on the ground that at least learns and understands the way of business locally, because you can't come, specifically as me as an American, you can't come from the United States and think that it's business as usual. Yes, actually, there's some great similarities in a lot of things, but again, you have some cultural changes that you have to understand and be able to maneuver around. And so, really, if you were to just come into whatever country in the world and think that that country is going to bend to the way that you do business, you're going to be in for a very rude awakening, and it's not going to be successful at all. So
yes.
having that mindset of, hey, I've got to come here and learn. And typically what I think the Middle East does probably better than anyone in the world is they have typically government organizations like here in Qatar is called Invest Qatar, and Saudi has their own Ministry of Affairs that can help set up businesses, but they really understand that, hey, learning how to do business in this country is going to be a bit different, and so they actually have these, I'll call it like a concierge service, and how to get set up where getting the registration and understanding the banking and the legal and all those things. I would actually say the Middle East countries probably do it better than anyone as far as having foreign companies coming in and allowing them to streamline the process to get set up and registered versus, I know in the U.S. there certainly isn't any type of entities like that help folks out, but again, understanding the entire scope of things. One of the things that I also engage with is the U.S. Embassy has an entire commercial section, and so engaging with them, again, it gives you some insight. That's kind of your go-between. Me as an American, of course, the U.S. Embassy would be a tool to me, but wherever you're from, as you're coming to another country, there are tools and contacts at your respective embassies that you also would want to engage with, because that's your connection not only to the local government but also to the U.S., where they're there to ultimately help promote your business, since you're an American company in my case. So as you really think about it in an overall perspective, and as project managers, we sometimes get in the mindset of just thinking about the here and now, but really the project managers, we can call it stakeholder engagement, but ultimately you're in business development as well. You're trying to understand where's the trends going, and how do we maneuver this and position ourselves to be successful as a company and win the follow-on work. And so you really have to put your business development hat on, and stakeholder engagement ultimately is what it boils down to. That can help you navigate through any instability or shifting alliances, or even new business laws that are coming out in the country. And so, and it's not. Also understand, it's not just you as a project manager. You as a company, typically you're going to have an enterprise of understanding, hey, you got business development contacts that are going to various different conferences, that are meeting with newsmakers and folks that are driving policy. So engaging with your own internal folks, certainly with the larger companies, you're going to probably have a Capitol Hill, as we call it in the U.S., folks that are engaging with your governments and understanding where trends are and where possibly the money and investments are coming
Yeah.
from. So, looking at it holistically and having that structure set up within your company to share that type of critical information then allows you as a company and a staff to really understand where we can go and position ourselves to mitigate the risks and turn those risks into opportunities. And so, but I can't stress enough, the things that I do most of the time can't be done from the U.S. Being on the ground and have your what I call the ear to the heartbeat, or that is the key. Where hey, when you're reading about a possible trend in the news, hey, I can read that and then I can go engage with people locally that I can understand, hey, is this actually happening, or is this just, a
Yeah.
reporter speculating? So really trying to be able to vet those things before it gets to the hierarchy within a company enterprise so that you're not wasting time on something that may or may not be true.
I mean, yeah, so it's a lot of good experience coming from, you being there on ground, and you coming from United States, a very large company, you trying to set up businesses or doing major projects. So yeah, look, you mentioned stakeholder engagement, working with locals, local connect, some of the organizations, some of the countries, they have departments established to set up the business or move around. So find relationship there, build relationship there. All this is fantastic, knowing more about the country before you start, and being there, live there, or work with the local people, understand their concern, understand their expectation, and if you can work with them and work out the best solution, win-win situation, then you can be successful there.
And not only that, I'll say too, is since the question specifically on the Middle East, as we all know, relationships in business are critical. But I would
Yeah.
actually say that here in the Middle East, relationships are even that much more important because, hey, let's be real. There's a lot of opportunity. There's immense energy resources, and so there's a lot of companies that will come through here and try and make a quick dollar, and that, quite frankly, will burn the local government or local stakeholders. And so, yeah, that having that relationship based in trust and that is the biggest thing where they're able to see you. One particular issue that we saw back in the day, not specifically to the Middle East, but hey, we were doing really great work for a particular customer, and we looked at how much money they were actually spending per year, and they always gave us great reviews. And this is a previous company I worked for, and so we finally, confronted them, I should say, not in an abrupt way, but saying, hey, you've given us all these great reviews, but overall, we're seeing maybe 10% of what your overall spend is. So, why aren't we seeing more funding and more opportunities? And they said, yeah, you do fantastic work, but as soon as you're done, the first thing we see is your behinds and your elbows because you're running to the airport to leave. And so that we want to be able to
Yeah.
collaborate with you and build relationships that extend beyond business in a lot of ways, just be able to do some bounce ideas off each other. So again, when you really think about it, when you're doing especially international business, you have to be able to put in the time, and there is an investment to have people on the ground that are going to be representative of your company and have your company's best interest to advance in the region.
Exactly. Perfect. Yeah. Now, my next question is, and it's very fresh in the media, well, going on for last 2, 3 weeks, especially change in government or political situation in United States. So, how the recent global tension, tariff or whatever going on between U.S.-China relations, sanction on Russia, influence your approach to risk identification and scenario planning at the portfolio level? So can you
I
share, sorry, let
Yep.
me finish. Can you share some specific instances where planning helped you to mitigate disruption?
Absolutely. So I think the recent tensions haven't really changed things for us simply because we go back to COVID. We're not that far away, removed from COVID. And I
Yeah,
think what COVID did really changed the entire complexity and view of risk identification and mitigation and scenario planning. And so ever since that happened, we have taken an entirely different approach. And one of the things that especially in project management and specifically in the work that we do, is the supply chains. That is always a critical part for us. And so one of the things, especially internationally, is diversifying our supply chains. Hey, everybody goes to a certain vendor for specific products, but hey, we need to be able to find another vendor or in a completely different part of the world that's the same exact thing, but just being able to buy it from someone else or going direct to the source.
yeah,
Particularly when back in COVID timeframe, as we were all being forced to really evaluate our supply chains, we happened to find a vendor that had a significant amount of, I think it was network switches at the time, and there was a shortage around the world where lead times are going out to 1 to 2 years and beyond, and they couldn't even guarantee it. And basically what we ended up doing is we found a vendor that had probably 10 to 20 of these particular switches. And even though we only maybe needed two of them, we bought all of them because not only did we made that strategic investment where,
mm,
hey, we're going to have these in-house to where nobody else can get them. And so putting that in our proposal and
yeah,
showing that in our particular, integrated master schedule, hey, we have these long lead items already on hand so
yeah.
that, when if should you award this contract to us, we're going to be able to bring your project timeline in, 1 to 2 years shorter than likely the competition. And so those type of things where it takes a little bit of extra money, but it positioned us for extensive wins that expanded us into markets that we didn't necessarily have before and customers. So, taking that investment and buying up what was available at the time,
Yeah.
led to some significant growth in areas that we didn't have before.
It's a very good example, especially, learning from the COVID time, what happened, you were able to, having another supplier and which was not available. Suddenly you have kind of uniqueness. You have the switches you're talking about, only you have it. Now, when you go for big contracts, it's, hey, we already have it. You don't have to wait for any time. We will put it, and you said, we can actually save some time for you. So you converted because of proactiveness, you converted that crisis into opportunity for
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so, and really, when we evaluated the risk at the time, we're going, even if we don't win anything, we could probably sell these and make probably more than what we bought them for. Not that we would do it, but when we actually looked at the risk, we're going, there is none. This is an opportunity that we have to do because it's going to pay huge rewards, and it did.
Yeah. And that's where the proactiveness, risk identification, scenarios, what if. Okay, if this happened, let's go do this. It's, you may have to pay more, probably pay more, but that give you more strategic advantage.
Yep, exactly.
Good. Good to see that. Now, my next question around cybersecurity. No, cybersecurity and digital sovereignty are now critical concerns for most of the companies. How do you ensure digital infrastructure and data resilience in project environments spanning multiple regulatory jurisdictions?
Yeah, this is a big one that you see, especially at least it's a very big initiative here in the Middle East and digital sovereignty to where all that data is to be stored within country, and you're actually seeing Amazon and all the different web services building these data centers throughout the Middle East and I know the world. And so specifically here, I can talk more about the Middle East. Again, that when you're setting up a project, again, it's very important to, hey, talk with the stakeholders of, identify the fact that, hey, did these original requirements, were they, did we need to have the data housed locally within a country, or is it okay to have it outside? Have that discussion up front and early, preferably before even the performance work statement comes out, because that's a big thing that can have some real big cascading effects and challenges. So your customer is going to be very happy if you identify that up front. Specifically on the cybersecurity, it can never be enough, it seems, at this particular time. And so, with everything being digitized and from your immigration, passport control and all the government entities, all that being interconnected, cybersecurity is a very big thing, which of course is why they want to be able to house that data locally. And so one of the things that we've been looking at is talking with the providers like the Amazon Web Services and things like that, to where you start teaming up with them and becoming almost one in a lot of ways, where, hey, we're already partnered up with this particular hosting service that's building a data center in your country. And so we've already talked about that and mitigated that to where, again, it becomes a value proposition where when you're presenting your solution and your package, hey, we've already taken care of that. And given, again, knowing that when you're on the ground and talking to various governments and wanting that digital sovereignty, that's something that you when you get right away, you can then put that in your proposition and to present to, and then you're already gaining rapport, and they realize that you already understand the importances of what the governments of whatever country are looking at and initiatives. So again, it shows you've done your homework, quite frankly, when you're presenting.
Yeah, and these are the concerns we, as you talked about, and more preparation, more advanced thinking, and data centers now, as you mentioned, local data centers. Actually, I was involved in one of the major data center setup in HP, back in Sydney. So there were three types of data, like a cloud. We talk cloud, public cloud, private cloud, and third one, government cloud. And the government cloud, the infrastructure for that, not only very protected, but also having some special, cage for them. Very, security is very tight on that. So so that has to be analyzed. And data is okay to be in other country, or should it be in the local in my country? And what are the data protection policies they have, the access policies, and who is having what? So more information you have, it can only make you better prepared for some situations.
Yeah, and not only that, from the cybersecurity perspective, depending on the sensitivity of the data, what you see a lot now is a standalone system where it's not touched to the cloud, so to speak. It's a standalone system to where you're limiting access to that system. So then one of your biggest concerns, how do you continue to secure it? In a scenario like that, it's some of the work that we do is, you got to think like a bad guy, so to speak. So when you're talking about a standalone system, the biggest threat to something like that is your insider threat. And so putting in those type of security controls on those types of systems, that's the type of thinking that you have to have in the protocols to ensure that you truly have as they call it, the zero trust cybersecurity stance. So those are again, that gives you a little bit of insight of the different things, but you do see a lot of that where they go to standalone systems depending on the sensitivities of the data.
Yeah, I'm thinking when you say standalone, you're also thinking about business continuity, because let's say a standalone system in one data center or in one office, what about something happened to that? Do we have connectivity?
Exactly. And a lot of the particular ones that we plan for in our work is absolutely redundancy, not only with your storage, but also even the fiber. You're
Yeah,
going to have entirely different cables of fiber and routings to where if one goes down or one gets cut, it
yeah,
automatically the system reroutes itself to the other one and vice versa. So, that's the type of planning, and usually when you're planning out things up front, that's usually in the requirements that most entities or customers are going to want to have just to ensure continuity.
exactly. And of course, there's like costly, but you have better resilience and long-term stability.
Yeah, it might be costly, but as we all know, and all of our lives have been affected by whatever cyber hacks, and
Yeah.
when you get hacked one time, believe me, it's far more expensive than
Yeah.
just doing it up front and having some redundancies in place.
And that's where we say cost of quality. Let's take the same thing, cost of security. Should we invest in the security upfront, or are we okay to take the hit when things goes wrong? Are you okay? No. Impact long
Exactly. And not only that, you have a reputational risk that usually
reputation.
is overlooked.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah, yeah. Think about, let's say your data is, one of the major bank, and it got hacked. Then what are you going to do? You first thing okay, I don't going to trust you. I'll take my accounts to somebody else. So, and
Yep.
there, big impact, big impact. So
Exactly. Yep.
be ready. So many global organizations are trying to turn geopolitical risk into strategic advantage, which you mentioned earlier. From your perspective, what mindset or framework help leaders adapt this forward-looking posture?
Well, I think number one, having you and I were talking off air. Certainly, you got to lean on some of the experiences that you have in your organization. There's going to be a lot of institutional knowledge that's going to help
Mm,
you with that mindset to be thinking, and then not only that, as you mentioned, your 21-year-old son is giving you little nuggets of things to think about. So having that blend, I think of really some experienced folks that have gone through a lot of different things throughout their career that will help you think about things. But then not only that, having that fresh blood, as I call it, of new thinkers. They might not necessarily have gone through the challenges that an experienced person has, but just brings some fresh perspective. And
yeah.
really having a framework in the organization that you can share information and ideas, I think is the correct blend to be able to be successful and really kind of position yourself for a future thinking way or positioning for an opportunity to really corner the market. I think though that is the framework that an organization needs to have. I mean, yeah, you have to have some creativity, and
Yeah.
sometimes, as I guess, as us old dogs, we have our ways of thinking, and there's usually some things that we haven't thought of before. And so, again, having that framework to be able to have an idea factory and vet it out. Hey, you can say, hey, the reason why this isn't going to work is because of X, Y, Z, and here's the proof in the pudding when I tried doing that years ago. History has an interesting way of repeating itself.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so, having that vetted out before you truly take it to the next level in an organization, I think is the proper way to do it. And again, not only that is having people on the ground, especially a global organization. What may be true here in the Middle East could be entirely different in the Far East, and vice versa in the West. So being able to adapt to different frameworks throughout the world, accounting for cultural business differences, things like that. But not only that, while being different, there may be similarities. So again, breaking down what I call those business verticals and sharing information across the enterprise in a sufficient way. Garbage in, garbage out. So you have to qualify what is being shared across the stakeholders. But again, I think it's very important to share those nuggets, because ultimately, when you start putting it together, you'll realize, hey, we've got something here that if we do this right, we're going to help shape the policy of whatever government throughout the world. So those are the opportunities that, if done right, could really position a company for sustained success.
And many companies have benefited out of crisis. If we see, even like COVID is not far away. During COVID, nobody was allowed to go out and travel. You stay at home, whatever. Now, impact on restaurants and airline huge. Now, many restaurants start getting into the home delivery part. So they identify, okay, this is if we are to survive, we have to get into home delivery, whether Uber Eats and all kind of things. Now, when we came out of the situation like COVID, now they have multiple channels of the income. Now people start coming back to restaurants, and they have this home delivery going on. So that crisis, they utilize it in a positive way, and now they're benefiting out of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great example of just the adaptation to the supply and demand, and working within the frameworks that you're legally allowed to at the time, and so kind of being able to have your cake and eat it too, as they say.
Exactly. And in my situation in 2020, I have a big plan. Okay, Germany, Italy, Belgium, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Australia, very, some Middle East, no, South America. Coming back from Saudi Arabia, I'm listening all this. I actually did, out of those big plans, I did one Saudi Arabia, PgMP and PfMP. While coming back, I was listening what's happening in China, what's happening in Italy. Oh my God, what I'm going to do now? My business as training depends on more physical interaction. Now that gave me opportunity. Hey, virtual. Why not I convert most of my program into virtual? So now not only have to minimize my travel plans, which is good. Now people can join from different parts of the world at the same time.
Yep, that's all of a sudden you see the GoToMeetings, the Zooms, the Microsoft Teams, all those different things came out, and we're serving the needs of the business world.
Yep, and that gives the opportunity to talk more and more, like recording this webinars, podcast.
Yep.
All right, my next question. In highly regulatory environments like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, how do you balance regulatory compliance with the agility needed for effective project execution? Are there any specific tools or practices that support this balance?
Yeah, I think I talked about a couple of them, especially as an international company. Certainly all countries have their own regulations in different environments. And again, it's important to be on the ground to gain a better understanding and build the relationships. But specifically, again, I know I'm talking this more to a U.S. type audience, but again, it goes without saying, every country, the U.S., your own country's embassy in whatever country, there are some great tools and assets that are usually very highly underutilized. So making sure that you're using that. Not only that, again, as I'm talking in the American lens, the U.S. American Chamber of Commerce, each country in in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, quite frankly, you could pick a country in the world. They call them AmChams. Those particular organizations where companies, typically U.S. companies, and you even have local companies that join that to collaborate and the networking, going to conferences, that are held in these countries, meeting the decision makers, building those relationships. And those type of things help build your tools to support a balance between the ability to execute. And so, again, it's being on the ground, building your network. And so ultimately, you can go to these type of conferences and these organizational meetings, and say, hey, we're dealing with this kind of challenge. And by the way, typically, when you're going to these organizational meetings, you're usually having say I'm in Qatar, you're going to have a Qatari senior leader possibly coming in and talking. And so, perfect example is I went to one in Saudi, and it was the minister it was the senior advisor to the Ministry of Strategic Investments, and talking about some of the challenges of getting set up as a business. And literally, we were able to give them that feedback. They took it back and literally ultimately made some changes shortly thereafter that it maybe didn't necessarily help us in the short term, but certainly helped future organizations coming into the country. And so again, using those organizations to the benefit, hey, if you're going to pay to be a member, so you might as well use them to the maximum extent possible to help shape things. And hey, we're dealing with these type of challenges. Can you help us? And 9 times out of 10, they likely will be able to. And so utilizing actually, there's even a U.S. Qatar Business Council, and most countries have those. So again, understanding that, but if you're just sitting in the U.S. and not being on the ground, you'll never understand these type of tools that are available to you. And again, I keep saying that I'm talking from a U.S. perspective, but there's many different organizations. I know there's business organizations for, example, Dharam, with India, and there's Australia, and sometimes all of the countries come together. So again, it's understanding the different organizations that can help you as a company be successful to execute at a high level.
Exactly, and that's a good suggestion. Whatever country you are, work with your embassy, especially we're talking large mega projects, we talk. So yes, work with your industry, embassies and the local authorities. You will find, maybe collaboration and better engagement relationship with them.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so my next question around supply chain. We have seen that many times. Supply chain disruptions are among the most immediate project risk. How do you assess and mitigate dependency on specific regions or vendors when planning at the portfolio level? We kind of talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, just to add on to what we've already talked about, one of the other risks of, when so we're looking at diversifying a supply chain, which, you have your different vendors and things like that. But the other thing that you need to evaluate when it comes to the risk of diversifying your supply chain is some of the, let's just call it fake lookalike type materials, or so there's some lookalikes, there's some fake, or whether they're made in another country that the quality is not as good. So you really have to do your homework, and there's certain things that we have to buy from typically Western countries simply because of the cybersecurity requirements for that particular component. So that is probably the biggest challenge within, on top of what we'd already talked about, is, okay, does this particular component meet the cybersecurity needs that we have? Because there have been times where I've held 2 particular components, one in each hand, looked exactly like the other. They had the same part number, but one was a lot heavier than the other one. And there was a reason behind that. And so, again, that's the type of risk that you have to really look at before you start, especially when you're talking about a highly sensitive system or components that could become a major risk for your customer.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's a good idea to, decentralize your supply chain. But yes, you correctly mentioned, be careful, what you're getting into. The other supplier, the material looks exactly the same, but the heaviness was different. One is more heavier than other. There has to be reason behind it. You can ask them if they can match or something, something you can try. I don't know. That's an area of specialization.
Yeah, what I ended up ultimately doing was taking the the MAC addresses and looking through the origins and found out exactly what I needed. And so, yeah. But you wouldn't even know that until you're literally typing that stuff in. So again, when you're diversifying your supply chain and talking with vendors, you have to be very specific in your requirements as a company to mitigate those risks of having, quite frankly, copycat parts, so to speak.
Yeah. Be careful. Be careful. Okay. That can be a secondary risk. We talk about risk, secondary risk. Mitigated one risk. What about the secondary risk?
Yep, no question.
Yes. Okay, so leadership. Leadership in volatile environment require an emotional intelligence and adaptability. Can you reflect on a leadership challenges during geopolitical tensions where soft skills were as critical as technical skills?
Absolutely. I won't name the country when I first came into it, but we were, again, it was I hadn't been on the ground long enough yet to understand how things worked.
Yep.
And I was, quite frankly, beating my head against the wall. I couldn't even get access to the very facilities that I needed to do work in because I didn't have proper flight line access. And so that required me getting a vehicle with a special stamp on the side of it. And quite frankly, that place did not allow us to drive those vehicles. So quite frankly, I was between a rock and a hard place. And so I ended up, again, just working through the different chain of command and ultimately got to a decision maker. He wasn't necessarily happy that, quite frankly, that person said, "How did you get my number?" And I said, "Sir, it's irrelevant how I got your number. The reality is that I need to speak with you, and I need to have this to be able to be successful and make you ultimately successful." And so, I was very cordial at first when trying to get things, but then I had to escalate it, and I got a little bit more aggressive, and to where I ultimately got to the real decision maker that I needed. I was kind of at that point where I was literally, I'm either going to get what I need or I'm probably going to get deported. But if I don't get what I need, I'm going to have to leave anyway. So, from a risk standpoint, I was going, I've got to make this happen. Otherwise, we're going home anyway. And ultimately got what I needed. And we became very successful. And that particular person that I ended up calling at that time, we're very good friends. We laugh about it now. And we built some tremendous trust out of it. And but again, those are the type of things where even my folks that were with me were like, "Justin, I don't know if you should do this." I literally was like, if I don't get this, we're all leaving anyway. So in my own mind, I was like, I have to do this. Again, and even my teams that to this day, I always had the mindset of we're going to be faced with something that we couldn't have planned for, couldn't have foreseen, and even in our, established ways of doing work in the region for 15 plus years, you have to expect the unexpected. It's just the nature of the beast. And so I always coined the phrase from my football days of, so what, now what? Okay, that didn't work. What are we going to do to overcome it? Because we can't just quit and take our ball and go home. We've got to find a way. And so, and creating that environment from my level helped the folks that worked for me. They'll come to me say, "Hey, we have this problem." And before I can even say, "All right, what are we going to do?" They'll even say, "But we got to work around here, letting you know this so that this is something we can plan for in the future." Like, it's fantastic. But, you have to, as a project manager, when you're first getting things started and, you've got a new team on your hands, you've got to create that atmosphere to where everyone feels empowered to be creative and not just be robotic. And I think that's very important, especially when you're doing work outside of your own country.
Yeah, and a fantastic example. And utilizing your out-of-box thinking, you made got it working, and relationship there. So
Yeah. And ultimately,
emotionally,
it was because I didn't have a relationship with that person as to why I wasn't getting what I needed. And so, you had to put the time in. And that, and like I said, most of the time, it's always funny when everyone knows now, but back in the day, I would always say, me explaining this to you over the phone is simple. There's no words that can explain it. You just have to be here to really understand it.
yeah.
And typically, what happens is when they do come over and they just tag along with me on a day just to see what I do, they usually are just going, wow, if you didn't know what you're doing, you could really lose your shirt around here. Well, yeah, that you're exactly right, but you could never explain that. First off, nobody would believe it, if you tried to say it on the phone. But, again, that's when you're really, adding value to your organization is being able to navigate those things. And ultimately, you're going to build the confidence to, hey, I've even told a customer, I said, you could put me at this particular time, you could put me anywhere in the Middle East, and I know I could be successful. I can just say that right up front, because I understand, where things are. I've diversified my own supply chains locally within the region to where I know what to look for. Like, perfect example, I'll never forget when we first came to Saudi Arabia. We were looking for what we would call a hardware store to get nuts, bolts, screws, things like that. Well, a hardware store in the Middle East is actually like your door handles and your cabinet handles in the kitchen, things like that. So when you typed in a hardware store, you would never get what we were actually looking for. And then ultimately, we ended up finding a bag of bolts and nuts, and it had a brand of a store on it. We went to that store, and it was exactly what we needed. Instead of a hardware store, it's called a technical supply store. So it's just those little things, that you wouldn't necessarily know, and you had to use just some deductive thinking and being resourceful, to find what you need. And then ultimately, the technical supply store had everything we could have possibly wanted. It's, as we get so spoiled in the US, well, you can go down to a Lowe's or a Home Depot or whatever. Well, you don't
can
have
get
those
anything.
luxuries here, so you have to be adaptable. So those are some of just the little things that you find out along the way that that you just have to learn the hard way.
Exactly. And yeah, until you are on the ground, you will not think that much. But yeah, as you correctly said, if I need something, I just go there, and within half an hour, I have it. Like the last week or week, yeah, actually, my laptop was not waking up. And what do? I have three classes planned, and say also, okay, no worries, go to Costco, bought one within. And funny thing is, by the time I'm fixing my new laptop, my old laptop started waking up. That's another
Of
story.
course.
Hey, why you have my computers?
Yep, that's always how it happens.
And prior to that, I tried everything, half an hour, this, pressing this, not a waking up. But moment this was waking up, the new laptop, this one started doing okay. Wow. Anyway, so good, thank you. So my next question for you is, from your practitioner lens, what lessons do you draw from successful case studies where geopolitical foresight ensured project continuity and strategic gains? Any standout success stories you'd like to share?
Well, I've kind of given some of those the personal ones that we've found over the years, but we've you look at overall strategically now, and I would say probably how with the current situation that we're seeing in the world, where financial markets are going way up one day and way down the next, and all this craziness. And if you watch the news, it's madness. But I think it's very important for everyone to, number one, just sometimes turn that off and
Yeah.
actually go and just talk to real people. Take away the hype and just get the real down to earth, what is actually happening. And not only that is it also always understand that there's always an opportunity in any of these particular situations. And it's how you respond now is going to put your organization on a trajectory probably for the next 5+ years.
Mm.
And so making sure that you're using the actual information on hand to make educated strategic decisions is very important. And for me, one of the things I do is I was in Germany last week, certainly with things going on in Europe, and the reality of them having to build up their own capacity from a defense perspective. There certainly is some uncertain times. There's concern of the citizens, things like that. But all right, as I just said, so what now? What are we going to do about it? What is and that question is where the opportunity lies. What are you as a company
Yeah,
going to do about it to strategically place yourself to capitalize on the opportunity? That is the real question that we need to be looking at and finding ways to position ourselves. I think that's more than anything the most important thing.
exactly. It's a challenging time, but you correctly said, we can benefit out of this. Every challenge, yes, some challenge to somebody, but some other people can think positive out of that. So, especially the current geopolitical situation, war going on, the supply chain disruption, with the tariff going up and down, so many uncertainties. I mean, it's many people are worried. There's reason for to be worried, but many people are taking advantage out of this, not a negative way, but putting themselves in strategically more resilient, looking out various other opportunities. As you correctly mentioned, during COVID, you find, okay, it's another supplier which can do where you can have all the availability. So looking around and don't just stick to one view. There can be multiple views.
Yeah.
So any last words you have about this topic?
Yeah, I would actually say, even being in Germany this last week and talking with various owners of companies where they're registering their businesses, or if they've already registered their businesses in, let's say, Europe, they're expanding their capabilities because they see, if Europe's going to be building their defense industrial base, hey, they have the capabilities to do these certain things. So even if they don't necessarily do it, you have to have the capabilities there
Yeah.
now to be able to capitalize when those opportunities come. And so talking with some of those folks and seeing, you'll see great opportunities within Syria, with the new dawn there in Syria. You see companies positioning themselves to offer support with rebuilding of that country. And so you see these type of things that, okay, yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in a country like Syria right now, but if you don't put the time in now to be able to be ready to go when those opportunities arise, you've missed the boat. So, okay, so maybe it's 1 year to 18 months out, but you have to be doing the work now so that you can be positioned and ready to go for those. And that takes obviously some guts. It takes a little some investment, and certainly you have to take a risk. But with risk comes reward, and you're certainly making those educated investments with the information that you have, and certainly building relationships on the ground now, so that you can execute at that time. Are these are critical times to be able to be in that position to be the solutions provider in the year to come.
Yeah. Look, as we are talking about all this thing, it's a very important topic and a lot to learn. And thanks to you, I cannot find anybody better suited for this topic because of your experience in Middle East, your travel to many countries all the time, and you're working with senior executives and political people, which give you different perspective. But yeah, the way you handle these questions, you a lot of knowledge. So folks, if you are listening and you have come to this point, it's a great, there are a lot of opportunities are there. Don't get worried. Yeah, risks are there, but can you understand the risk early and be ready for that and make the best out of that?
Yep, that's the key. That's the key to success.
Exactly.
Because when the opportunities arise, everybody the opportunity comes out on the street, so to speak.
Yeah.
Everybody's already positioned. You're too late to the game. You have to be there. Yep. You have to be there up front doing the work to prepare and have the relationships to execute when the thing comes out on the street. If you're just waiting till then, you're done.
Late.
You're too late.
Exactly. So thank you, Justin, and another interesting session. We have done so many podcasts together, and a lot to learn from your talks. And guys, if you have not watched the previous discussion, please watch them. Justin has been sharing a lot in the last 2 years now, more than 2 years, ever since you did PgMP, PfMP, and we got into this. So the best thing
it's scary when you said years. It's like, where did that go?
Yeah, actually, I mean, believe it or not, it's almost maybe more than 2 years.
Gosh, I think what did we do? 2023 was when I did PgMP and PfMP.
No, you did 20. Let me tell you, 2022 you did PgMP, PfMP. Yes. I remember the date.
Goodness.
Actually. You did. Let me tell you the date. You tell me, 2nd of October you did your PgMP, and November the 9th you did PfMP.
Yep, you were spot on.
And that's 2022. So since then we have been talking. So thank you very much for your contribution. I'm sure people watching this, they're going to thank you a lot, because these experience exposes you not, unless you get them, you will not learn. So why not you learn from experience of Justin? So thank you, Justin, and thank you guys for watching, and looking forward to another discussion for very soon.
Always a pleasure.
Great, thank you, and I will see you soon again.
Looking forward to it.